Yes, thank you for your comments, panelists. For our next presentation, we have Mohamed Shameem, an undergraduate student from the Wadiyar Center of Architecture, located in Mysore, India. The title of the thesis is Glocalism, Reinterpretation of Craftsmanship in the Public Realm at Mumbai, India, guided by architect Anjali C. under the theme Urban Management. Can we hear from you, Mohamed?
Yes.
I think there is some tech issue from Mohamed Shameem's. Shameem, are you there in the meeting? Yeah. We can't hear you clearly, Shameem. You can maybe try to present your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, it is coming.
Yeah. Thank you. So my name is Mohamed Shameem, and so my thesis topic is Glocalism, the reinterpretation of craftsmanship in a public realm. So as an introduction, I started with architecture and fashion, the two different disciplines, and to understand the relationship and interdependency between the two disciplines, and the factors which affect the changes in the both fields, such as religion, region, and economy. So I tried out to do few case studies on the climate as the aspect, and I realized how the changes is almost alike in both the field and in each and every climate in the country. And coming to the fashion in the country, how the global local pursuit of an individual changed the context, which created a context-rooted identity and a context-free identity among the people. So this was the three initial literature case studies which I have done to understand how the culture shift happened and how what is the current scenario happening in the fashion industry in our country. So the first one is the Chanakya School of Art, which is in the city of Mumbai, where they make textile fashion pieces for the Western brands like Christian Dior. So Christian Dior, Hermes, and all. So half of the design which the exhibit is mostly going from the Chanakya School of Art. So their main ideology was to get our country in a global level, to recognize our recognition of Indian craftsmanship in a global level. And the second case study was on a fashion designer, one of the fashion designer in our country. Her name is Anita Dongre. Again, her ideology was to how the Indian craftsmanship can provide a suitable option for the sustainable future of the country and of the environment. And her point was to how the women empowerment from the local rural area of the country can connect the artisan to the global market. And the third case study which I've done is on a Gangamaki studio, which is a Japanese studio organized by two Japanese fashion designers, but it is located in the northern part of the India, in Dehradun, where they make traditional Japanese clothes with the help of traditional Indian craftsmen. So the initial question was, is there any architectural scope, or is there anything architecture can do to the people who follow the ideology of local, which means those who consider both the aspects from the global and local market? And also, is there anything which architecture can do to the fashion industry? It is the second highest income and greatest polluter in the country. So the aim was to demonstrate the idea of local in architecture design by achieving an optimum interface between local and local within these two disciplines. And the main initial objective was to explore the multidisciplinary interface between these two, this fashion architecture, and how to ideate the notion of local in between them, and also to arrive at a conceptual framework which achieves an optimal interface between global and local, which is translated into a design program. So in order to understand, since India is very diverse and rich with traditional methods in textile manufacturing, such as dyeing, embroidery, printing, and weaving. So these are the few methods these are the few sketches and methods which I used to study, which I used to understand the spatial implication and workflow happens in each and every methods. And have so few case studies on the people and the individual people or the group of people who have achieved the ideology of local, and how the global linkages is happening from our country throughout the world. So considering India is, like I said, considering India is one of the India is very diverse with traditional manufacturing. So the derivation of architecture program was in a way that the scale of the program should be very minimal, and it can be replicated throughout the country. Considering it is very diverse from one point to another. And also the perspective in ideology of local can be implemented in different places very varily. So the program derivation, architecture program derivation was in two phases. The first one was the incubation training, where the admin, which means the people who have already achieved who follows and achieve the ideology of local, will provide the facility for both contemporary designers and traditional workers, where they provide the workspace for them. And the second phase was the incubation center, where they provide the space for designing, executing, and exhibiting with the help of outreach activities like shows, exhibition, events, and pop-up shows, and few common facilities in between to interchange the ideology, interchange the thoughts and ideology between the contemporary and traditional workers in between them. And this was the expected workflow within the program, and how the fusion of contemporary workers and traditional workers can happen, considering the workflow in the program. And coming to the site selection, like I said, India is very diverse with the different traditional textile manufacturing method, and Mumbai is one of the fashion hub and the fastest growing city in the country, and also which also have a very huge textile history. So I thought Mumbai can be a better decision to implement the initial idea of local, and taking Mumbai as the site will be a good choice. So as a thread of the history, from 18th century, the first establishment of cotton textile mills happened in India, and it came around 52 mill lands situated in the country. From the mid 90s, the decline happened due to the policy changes and labor disputes. Around the whole 52 mills were considered. They stopped the working of all these mills, and it considered as a sick mills. And in late 90s, a study group which was led by the architect Charles Correa and the team conducted a study to understand how the redevelopment potential of the to understand the redevelopment potential of the site the whole lands, and how it can be it can give back to the city itself. And again, he has from his their study, they have suggested by understanding the structural stability of the building in each and every site, which is supposed to, they have suggested which building can be building is supposed to be retained, and others can be demolished. So from the whole site, which I filtered down to the one precinct in Baikula region, where it is known as Lalbagh precinct, where I have chosen the United Mill number 5, considering the scale of the site, and also which is situated in a very dense residential users, and their requirement for open spaces. So these are the few photographs which I took from the walk proximity of the site. So these are the few initial site study which I've done to understand how the connectivity and how the figure ground and vegetation in the site happens. And taking the suggestion from Korea, and what are the key elements in the site which I'm planning to retain as it is, such as spinning block, like he suggested, and the other two elements were the existing water reservoir in the site and the chimney, as giving importance to the history of the site.
You have
so this is the
to wind up your presentation, and time will be up. You
so
have
this
another
is the documentation. Yes, ma'am. So this is a documentation of the existing spinning mill, which I have done to understand the structural stability and the method which they have used in the building. So coming to the design, from the initial studies, I have derived to focus on the main four strategies, such as the approach of Glocal, the publicness in the site, and how I can give back to the community, and how I can give the importance to the site, and and also to consider the economical value of the cities, economical value of the site. So the initial step was to how I can improve connectivity to the site, where I have tried to connect few roads from the north-south highway of the Mumbai to the site throughout the to the west throughout the backside of the site, where it won't be affect the whole design proposal and the pedestrian part of the site. And the second one was the extension of the existing water body, which helped to create a public edge, and also which helped to define the approach to the site, to the central open plaza. And
I'll
also
you to wind up now, because the time is up. So I'll let you do your conclusion right now.
Yes, ma'am. So giving back to the public, I have tried to local program to the upper level, and the whole ground to the for the public, for multi-purpose functions and activities and outreach, like cafe, pop-up stores and all. And on the first floor, it's just a public corridor which I created by pulling down a staircase to the first floor, which takes the public through the co-design space, incubation training, where the workspace itself acts as a exhibit, and few exhibition sports or zones for the incubation center. And so coming to how I retain the existing building, and how the building should talk about the history, and how where the building also should act as a exhibit, where there should be a movement throughout the building which leads from the ground level to the roof line, where at last it will give a visual perspective of the new intervention and the historical part in the building, such as chimney. The landing of each part can be utilized as a multi-level floor plate. Since it's a jackass floor slab, it was feasible for me to articulate in between them, and taking the roof lines and keeping few vegetation inside for the public to feel like it's a place for them. So, for the conclusion, the insight from the overall thesis was to understand how the urban revitalization can happen, how I can inspire the future through my intervention, how the cultural identity, awareness and responsibility, how the community engagement and empower the community through sustainable and heritage, and also a holistic approach considering the history of the site. So through the thesis, I try to showcase as a conclusion through the thesis, I try to showcase the transformative potential of united local heritage, innovative design and community engagement, which to create a sustainable, inclusive urban spaces which addresses and enrich both cultural and social dimension. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
The heart of any urban center lies in the local context and the people who breathe life into it. Community involvement is important in the realization of sustainable and inclusive neighborhoods. I invite the panelists to share their thoughts regarding the presentation. Can we start with Architect Nicolo?
Sure. Thanks for your presentation. I think you highlighted a really important point. I mean, at least in the contemporary years, of the relationship between the local and the global. So we can see even nowadays all these big industries which are really taking over the local industries, really famous delivery companies or IT developments. So I think it's really important to also have a counterpart in the development to take care even of the localism of the different sites. I find your presentation really methodological in the definition of certain aspects. So for example, in the definition of the functions and the space for each function. So in some points, we can say you're really a down-to-earth man. So you really take into consideration all the data, all the information. So maybe the suggestion could be to, let's say, to try to dream sometimes. So especially now that you're still an undergraduate, so maybe in the coming academic studies, just try to dream sometimes. So okay, we have data, but you will have time in the practice to, let's say, be bored by all the limitations. So just try to dream. I found really interesting the historical framework, even to understand what is the situation and also the development of the conditions throughout all the different years, especially in relationship with the site and the geographical conditions, as well as the notions of heritage that you highlighted here and there in your presentation. I need to say that at the beginning, the research question was not really clear. So it took me some slides to actually understand what you were mentioning with global, local, also the relationship between architecture and fashion. So at the beginning, it was not really straightforward, your intentions. And the other element, of course, I think, and it's not just for you, but it's in general, I think it's important to understand the hierarchy of the informations, because as even in the previous colleague, you sometimes tend to put the most interesting informations in a really tiny corner of the paper, when maybe you have really enormous diagrams with just a few keywords. And even in terms of time management, I think it's really important to to balance all the different informations. In terms of the project, as just a last comment, in the end, your design basically defines a sort of courtyard, because we saw in the axonometric image how you have two massive towers and some high-rise buildings in the surroundings. So I think in your project, it would be crucial to understand the relationship with the surrounding areas. Because of course, if you have a courtyard inside of the urban fabric with really high-rise buildings, I mean, the project tends to be, let's say, pressed by the influence of what's happening around. So I think it's crucial to understand, the relationship between all the different sides of the projects. And thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Can we hear from Dr. Manoj next?
Yeah, I'll try to be very short. In fact, the idea of local and integrating global and local is quite an interesting phenomenon, especially in the contemporary world. And if you look at Indian cities as a whole, this concept of the fight between the global and the local identity is quite evident. and it is obviously an urban issue. And we do have this particular concern, especially when we design large, urban spaces. And why I was mentioning this was it's a very interesting topic that you picked up. But one thing what I would like to mention here is there are certain components which you could have seriously looked upon. Like for example, if you split that into serious elements, like for example the culture component, the component related to color, the component related to morphology, the component related to activities. So if you can split it like that, something interesting would have emerged, especially in an Indian context. So I think that is something which you really missed in this whole process. You started with that. That's what I understood. You started with that. You had this discussion in between, but I couldn't see any slides or any discussion that's happening on that scale, where you could really come up with certain set of design guidelines which you could infuse into the final design demonstration. So in the demonstration, what I felt was like you were much more carried away by the present context, and those components which I was trying to mention was totally missing in this. That's something which I felt. Otherwise, it's a wonderful work to be at a graduate level. The way you have thought of and the topic that you have identified, picked up, is quite interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Can we hear from you next, Dr. Nathan?
Thank you, Mohamed, for your interesting project. I really enjoyed it. Although, if you would allow me to give you a little bit of tip, as my dear colleague was saying about the time management, because sometimes we really have a fascinating project, but we are just giving a lot of time for the few 2-3 slides at the beginning and just forgot that the real project is at the end. So what if the jury members don't know about your project completely or haven't seen your project? So you might give a little bit of an impression that this is not a complete project, or there's something which is missing there. It's not, I'm not underestimating your project. It's really fascinating, and thank you for it, but please try to manage the time in any future presentation. Well, I support the point, of course, of my colleagues related to the local global issues, because most of the cities right now, they are just using like the globalization issue, like just let's go to the highest, go to the newest, go to the whatever extremist issue. But you're trying to figure out a way to design things or take advantage of buildings and try to look at the local aspects. And this is really fascinating. Maybe you might need to add more details into the architectural part at the end, because I didn't see it that much in the architectural issues. I can understand the sections, I can understand the distribution of activities, but I want to see how the fashion has been affected your design decisions, and I would like to see the spaces, how people were going to navigate and use the spaces there. Maybe it was not clear for me. I don't know if it might be clear. It was clear in your project or your presentation at your school, but it wasn't that much. And I think you need to emphasize it more. It's not a question, it's just a comment. But I really enjoyed your project. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Before we move on to the next